Welcome to another session. I hope you are well. It's a pleasure always. In today's session, I want to talk about depression, but I want to connect depression to what I call the engine of life. Um, but before I start today's session, let me share a few things that perhaps um, I'm hoping that you might either agree with, but certainly not disagree with. When you meet people who are suffering from any form of anxiety or depression, people who have had difficult mental health issues, um, each person has um, a personal experience of the pain, the suffering, the trauma, if that applies, and for some people, mostly the uncertainty. For some people, the struggle we have has to do with perhaps we're starting to age, and our depression is by virtue of the fact that we do not look the way we used to look, and so our sense of self-worth and self-esteem starts to take a beating, and we repeat those thoughts regularly, and over many months, years, we start to feel as though we're not good enough. We start to feel depressed. It begins firstly, not just as a metaphysical issue or a psychological issue, but more of a physical, something we can see physically. For some other people, if you think about athletes, they get injured at the peak of their careers, an injury comes in, they can't perform in the way that they once used to. They lose sense of their self-concept, their self-worth, their self-esteem is gone. They have a crisis of self-identity. That starts to spiral into a feeling of inadequacy, a feeling of loss, a feeling that they're not deserving of love, care, attention. Now, for some other people, it might just be you believe you were born this way. As long as you can remember, you've always lacked energy, you've always felt tired, you've always struggled to do things that other people in your peer group could do. You know, play football, play volleyball, run around, go dancing, hang around with boys or girls. You've struggled. But you cannot, so far, or you haven't been able to, put a finger on what the issue really is. And so, over many years, you find just a feeling as though you're being forced down. Something is holding you back. That creates a feeling of anxiety, a feeling of mental fatigue, and depression. Now, I can go through the list and I can continue. The point of these various examples was to demonstrate something, that we all have an individual experience with regards to suffering. And depression is a form of suffering. Now, I have said, and I continue to say in regular sessions, that all of human suffering stems from ignorance. All of my sufferings have always been as a result of something I did not know. Let me say that again. All of human suffering stems from ignorance. I am personally an ignorant man. There are so many things and so much I do not know. But what I have tried to do over the many years is maintain a curiosity for learning, an appetite for learning, and to be fascinated rather than be frustrated about things, to be open to learning. In many ways, the reason I share some of these ideas is so that my bad ideas die by virtue of putting them in the public domain and having them interact with other good ideas, or other ideas generally. And in doing so, my bad ideas die instead of myself dying. And for most people, we die because we refuse to allow new information come through, or we hold on to our bad ideas so strongly, and therefore we suffer. In today's session, I want to talk about depression and mitochondria. And most people may not have heard of that word. What does mitochondria mean? What does it stand for? Where has he got this concept from? Well, if you did biology like I did, I never understood this. I never was told about it, and I went through life for most of my adult age, and it was only until my 40s that I came across this word. Now, let me explain. Yes, I may have come across the word, but I didn't know what it meant. See, knowing and understanding are intrinsically linked. To understand something means you have to know it. Now, I may have been familiar with the word, at a glance, but I never really understood what it really, really meant. And here is even more importantly, as the saying goes, that you don't understand something until you can explain it to someone else in a manner such that they do. I'm going to attempt to do what I think is the impossible, which is to talk about mitochondria, because I find it fascinating. But, like most people, I really don't understand it as well as I should. I'm still learning. Your mitochondria is simply the engine of your life. Put it that way. In the sessions I did previously, I talked about energy. And if you remember, and let me pause this and connect this to where we are today. I started this session and I said this is going to be the most holistic approach to depression. I do not necessarily take credit for all of what I share, because I've learned and gathered all this information from great people. I've studied under the best people, some of the best doctors in the country, some of the best teachers, both living and those who are dead. And I pulled together what I thought perhaps was a holistic approach to understanding depression. You have to treat the whole person. You have to treat them in the physical plane of consciousness, on the mental, psychological plane of consciousness, and then the spiritual. We intend to go through all of those in this series. I started with the physical, and at the core of the physical, I started by explaining the importance of energy. We deliver energy to the body. Energy moves, energy is generated, is distributed, and it then is spent. And in the sessions prior, I talked about the car analogy as a way of explaining energy delivery to the body, energy delivery to the heart, energy delivery to the brain, and energy delivery as a concept. I made reference to the fact that you have, if you think about your body as a car, there will be several parts of the car that we use as analogies to describe several parts of the body. The engine of a car we call your mitochondria. The fuel system in a car, we say that's your diet and your gut function in the body. The oxygen that is delivered to the car, sucked in through the oxygen system, for some cars, is your air delivery system. For some other cars, it's called by a different name. That oxygen system in the body, the equivalent is your lungs. Your accelerator pedal, we call that your thyroid glands. Your gearbox in the car are your adrenal glands. Now I can go on and I can go on and I can go, and I covered this previously. The intention is not to go through everything. The key part is to simply say that your car works in a manner which most people understand. The body, unfortunately, we don't have a manual for the body, so most people do not understand how the body functions. Mitochondria has been the one aspect that we have almost no knowledge of, because we've never really been taught about how it functions. It is your common powerhouse. It's the powerhouse for all of what I'll call the multicellular activities that take place in your body. The powerhouse for all of your multicellular operations, organs, functions, everything that happens in the body, it powers the whole thing. That's your mitochondria. Now what this simply means is that your mitochondria is central to life. Why weren't you taught about how it functions? It makes up about 25% of the heart. With regards to the liver and the liver function, the mitochondria is key for the operation of the liver to do all of the tasks we need it to do. The brain doesn't function well without adequate, well-functioning mitochondria. In many ways, what you find is as you go through the human body, every pathology you can identify is connected to the mitochondria. When the body doesn't function well, and there isn't energy delivery properly, we connect it to mitochondria. If you switch off the energy in a car completely, all of the energy in the car, without reference to the types of energy, just all the energy, the car is practically dead. It becomes just an object, something decorative. It has no function, it has no ability. Similarly, in this particular space where I find myself, if I were to turn off all the energy, the start will be the light will go, so you wouldn't be able to see me clearly. You also find that the recording device I'm using, which is just simply a mobile phone, will go, which means I can't produce any content. The heating, the Air conditioning system will go, which means in a short while I'll start to get cold or get too hot. Energy is central to everything we do in life. Why? The human body and the human being is simply energy. And the most minor component, the most little component of the human is energy. Science studies the energy, you might say, around, and theology studies the energy within. They're both studying one and the same thing. Energy just is, and humans just are. But mitochondria is so key because it connects every single thing in the human body all the way down to the most simple cells. So if your mitochondria is not functioning as it should, you have a problem in your body. If you switch off all the energy in the body completely, in this particular instance, I'm saying mitochondria is the engine of the body. If you switch that off, everything fails. So there are people who, and I go back to the process I started with, there are people who remember as far back as they can as having low energy, suffering from what we call chronic fatigue, suffering from what we call inflammation, which is chronic fatigue and inflammation. So I should have said suffering from ME, which is chronic fatigue and inflammation. There's some people who've suffered all of their lives and they tell you, listen, they've always been depressed because they just could not function as other people could. If you study these people and if you ask questions, what you find is they can explain to you how much energy matters to them because they do not have enough. They are not generating enough energy. It's not being delivered to the right organs properly, and therefore they are always in an energy deficit rather than in an energy surplus. If you slow down your mitochondria, you slow down the function capability of the body. Your heart functions poorly, your lungs function poorly, your heart functions poorly, your brain, your liver, every single part of your body starts to break down. Why? You're turning off the energy in the body. It also means, conversely, that if you turn up all the functions of the body, then it means the body functions at its most optimum state. Now, there are several reasons why your mitochondria might function poorly. Now, we talk about this and we refer to this as your mitochondria going slow. Your mitochondria can go slow for multiple reasons. One of them could be that you don't have the right fuel in the system. You don't have the optimal fuel that a car needs or the body needs. I like water. I drink water. The car that I drive does not function in the way that I do. I assume I was to have a glass of water just before I jump into the car. And let's assume I drive to the petrol station. And as I drive into the petrol station, I notice, well, I've got to put fuel in the car. And I stand by the pumps and there's diesel, there's fuel. And I say, well, do you know what? I just don't feel like giving this car petrol, despite it being a petrol car. I'm going to put water in the oil, in the tank, the fuel tank, because I like water. By giving the car what I like, I have destined that car to a state of failure because it won't function. Similarly, the body works in the same way. Our mitochondria will go slow if we give the wrong food, if we're not giving the optimal fuel to the body. And the fuel of the body comes by virtue of our food, primarily diet. What do we eat? What are you eating? And if you notice, as I've started this series of sessions, I've been moving towards what I think is a central theme with regards to energy, which is diet. What are you eating? And succinctly, you are what you eat. And therefore, if you look at what you eat, then you have an idea about the potential root cause of some of our suffering. When we talk about depression, especially on the physical side, now we haven't got to the psychological and the mental side or the emotional side. What we're simply saying is that depression is simply a picture of what is going or happening in the body, and that begins with energy. And at the root cause of all of that could be you're not giving the body the right fuel, and therefore the engine of the car, the mitochondria, is struggling. And so you might find a car goes slow because it doesn't have, or in this case, it lacks the right fuel. Now, your mitochondria may also not be functioning at the optimal rate for whatever reason. There are many. It might be that it lacks oxygen. You're not bringing in the right oxygen in, therefore you can't burn. It might be you don't actually have the right supplements being supplied, and that supplements could be nutritional supplements. It could be supplements that support the diet that you have. It could also just simply be that your system works in a manner that actually you find it. There are things that are blocking the natural flow of how the body should function. We talk about metals, it could be toxins, it could be immunoproteins. There are things that could be blocking the natural functioning of the body. Your mitochondria might be functioning poorly because you don't have the right proper controls. Just like an engine, an engine doesn't just fire itself and just go from 0 to 100. There's a control mechanism. There's something that allows for the coordination between the amount of oxygen and the amount of fuel. Mixed in the right proportion, you have the right amount of energy created by the spark of life, and you inject more fuel, the car moves faster. You take down the fuel, the car goes slower. There are several reasons. The point I'm making with all of this is that your mitochondria affects everything about you. I started today's session and I made reference to the importance of understanding that everyone has a particular narrative. For some people, depression is a function of, oh, I'm getting old, or I've got a scar on my face, or I've got something that's deformed my face, my body. It's been an attack on what you consider to be yourself or your personal identity. You might be interested in understanding that mitochondria controls the aging process. So, if you understand how your mitochondria functions, you can slow down the aging process by making sure that the mitochondria is not going slow, which is only a result of feeding the wrong fuel by virtue of your diet to the body. Now, I hope today's session has been useful. In the sessions to follow, I'm going to start to move through the various parts of the car. We've talked about mitochondria, the engine. We'll talk about the gearbox. And then we'll move forward and we'll talk about the accelerator pedal, which is your thyroid, your gearbox referring to your adrenals. You'll get to understand how all of these parts of the body intrinsically work together to achieve an optimal performance in your body, in your sense of well-being. Now, I'll end as follows. There have been times when I've had an injury. It hasn't been an injury of significance, but it stopped the overall functioning of my entire system. Small injury, but it holds. It's the same thing. We understand that little hinges support big doors. Or put differently, big doors are held up by and are supported by small hinges. Why? It's not the size that counts. When we talk about mitochondria, for most people, we're talking about intercellular or cellular level issues. So most people don't conceptually don't understand why it matters, but it does. When I talk about my hand or my head or my legs, these are things that we can see physically. The body is very different, because when we talk about things that occur within the cells of the body, because we cannot see it, conceptually we struggle with how it functions and how it works. I'll ask you to apply some faith as you move forward with me in the sessions that I cover. Now, I'll leave you with something that I think perhaps speaks to you. To those who have faith, no proof is necessary. And to those who do not have faith, no proof will be sufficient. In going through this journey of learning, one of the things you may have to do, despite how difficult it might be, is to have faith. Just hold on to that belief that something good can come out of this. In many ways, for some of you, it would work like a placebo. For others, it will come by virtue of awareness. Get the information, process the information, go back, study, do your personal homework. And all we are simply trying to do here is give you as much as I can, or give you as much as is possible, so that you can apply what I call the process of elimination. You start with the physical, and you eliminate. Effectively, you're checking the various parts of how your body should function to ensure that it's not an energy delivery issue. And then we move to the mental, and then we move to the spiritual. I hope today's session has been useful.